October 1st, the Islamist regime in Iran fired more than 180 ballistic missiles at Israel. This comes after a drone attack in April. And meanwhile, Israeli forces are fighting in Lebanon and in Gaza. Israel's government has vowed to retaliate, but will it be enough? From the Ayn Rand Institute, this is Elan Journo. I'm the author of What Justice Demands, America and the Israeli Palestinian Conflict, and two other books on what went wrong after 9/11 in confronting the Islamist threat. One brief reaction today, more next week in our full-length episode of the podcast. Will Israel's promised response be enough? And here, it's important to remember a warning that we heard from the Biden administration early after October 7th, which was for Israel not to make the mistakes of 9/11, not to act in anger, overreact, and become emotional and go awry. That is not the right lesson. And I think there are echoes of the mistakes of 9/11, but they're completely misunderstood. And what Biden and others have argued in trying to caution Israel is the wrong lesson. Even as I think Israel has a moral right to defend itself, I fully think that's true. My concern is that it will fall short of doing so. This was my concern in April after Iran's massive drone attack. This was my concern immediately after October 7th. And we've seen that in the ways Israel has conducted the fighting in Gaza has been inconclusive. We're on the brink of reaching the one-year anniversary of that conflict. And I think part of that is due to the kinds of patterns we saw in America's response in 9/11 in Afghanistan and Iraq, which is to put the concern over civilian casualties and world opinion ahead of the objective of defeating the threat in its midst. And we've seen this kind of concern as well across decades of Israel's conflict with Hamas, with Hezbollah, and with Iran. This is a point I've been arguing for many years, and I've developed this position in my book, What Justice Demands. Now, it's clear to me, and I think it's clear to any sensible person, that Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran are fundamentally responsible for the casualties in these wars that they have instigated. And Israel, in my view, is fully justified in defeating them. But the worry I have is that it will not do that. It will not pursue that goal. And that is the sense in which there's an echo here, maybe a stronger resemblance to the mistakes of 9/11, in which America was militarily strong, but did not have a clear objective, and more fundamentally, did not have the moral confidence in its fight to defeat the adversaries it was pursuing. Now, it's important to acknowledge, and I think this is a significant point in the last few weeks, that tactically and at a mission scale, Israel's ability is really impressive. If you think about its assassination of Hamas leader within Iran, its assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, and prior to that, the use of explosives in pagers that were targeted at Hezbollah operatives and the walkie-talkie attacks. There's impressive intelligence, impressive military capability here. When you zoom out, however, it's unclear that the basic goal of Israel's response to October 7th, to Hezbollah's fight from Lebanon, and to Iran's wider attack and coordinated attack, it's not clear that Israel has the concept of victory. I think it's talked about defeating these adversaries. It's fully capable of doing so, but it hasn't done so. And it hasn't done so after repeated rounds of fighting, which suggests to me that this is rooted in a moral philosophic weakness, not a military weakness, not fundamentally intelligence weakness, though there have been problems with intelligence, but a philosophic moral issue, which is the belief that one has a right to one's life to defend oneself in the face of aggressors. And to me, that is the biggest worry as we wait to see what Israel's response really looks like and whether it will be sufficient, or, as I worry, it will be a limited response as we saw in April, which then invites a further round of attack. And we see a replay of what Israel's policy was towards Gaza for the last 15 plus years, which was, as Israeli officials put it, mowing the lawn, essentially degrading Hamas's capabilities every few years, allowing them to regain those capabilities and fight back. That would be catastrophic in the case of Iran and Iran's allies, Hezbollah and Hamas and others. I think it's beyond time for Israel to defeat its adversaries and to hold clearly its right to defend itself as a free society, protecting the lives and freedom of its people. It needs to pursue victory, and that it hasn't done so in the last few years is more than amply demonstrated by these returning attacks from Iran. Join us on Monday for an in-depth episode of the podcast, and we'll be looking back at the 1 year since October 7th. I expect to be joined by my colleague Onkar Gate. Until then, goodbye.